Hi everyone. Uh, I'm coming to you after some time now. I was thinking about my next topic, and while I was thinking about a lot of things about bikes, uh, an idea dawned upon me that we always talk about motorcycles. We always talk about what motorcycle to buy, what motorcycle is nice, what is new, what is old, and all that stuff. But we hardly ever talk about ourselves. I've noticed something interesting. I've noticed that uh, we have this thing about what we want and we have this thing about what we need, but we're not able to settle down really with what we enjoy. So we probably end up going with something that we want and then we try to convert it into something that we need. It's interesting. For example, like we'll go and buy a sports naked machine, right? And then we're going to talk for hours about how it's not the best tourer, like the modifications that we need to do to make it a tourer. Maybe put on some handlebar risers, maybe change the seats, maybe change how the foot pegs sit on the bike. Or we're gonna go and buy ourselves a tourer and then we're gonna say oh, it's not engaging enough. The interesting thing is why are we not able to identify with what we want? Why is it that we're so confused? And there is a beautiful aftermarket for motorcycles out there that feed into this constant confusion of ours. And maybe we like it because everybody enjoys modifications to an extent, but there is a difference between modification and correction. And I think most of us get confused over there. Even I think even I'm spending some time around that space in that space where I'm trying to understand how I can make my GS work better for me. But that's in the space of correction. And I must understand, and it's for all of us, that that's not in the space of modification. Modification is technically all cosmetic, but correction is analytical. It's technical. You want your bike to get retrofitted a little more to you. And that actually justifies to a lesser number of people out there because most of the stock bikes, most of the bikes that come out in the stock setup are designed for the average person. It's not designed for the people who are on either sides of the spectrum to the average. And by that I mean by average I would mean people weighing in a certain range, people who have heights in a certain range, maybe from 5'7" to 5'10" is like an average in India. Weights would be somewhere around 70 to 100 kgs average in India. Uh, in the past 10 years, I've owned a few bikes. That is what gives me the insight in for this video. Okay, I started on the Enfield 350, Classic 350. I till they don't know what genre to put that bike in. It essentially I think is a cruiser because it's supposed to give you the comfortable ride, but it's also sort of like a lifestyle roadster bike that aids you in looking cool. And beyond that, it's not really much. Then I had a sports bike, the Ninja 650, a slightly more committed, aggressive position, but it's still more comfortable compared to lot other sports bikes. Then after that, I had a Tourer, which was the Versa 650, and upright position. You sit straight. You can sit in the saddle for hours and on, 10 plus hours. You can go on that bike without getting tired. It can do great speed. It can take a pillion. It can take a lot of luggage. It's a Tourer. Then now I have the GS310. I can tour on it, but I'd rather just do more off-road adventures on it. However, I'm still learning a lot of that, but that's the difference, really. So if I take something like the GS310 and then I want to make it a tourer, I'm going to start making changes, right? I'm going to first change the seat. Then I'm going to put some handlebar risers. Then I'm going to put a lot of luggage carrying things and all of that stuff. and then I'm going to go and tinker with my preload. It just has one preload adjustment that you can do. I mean, just on the rear. Or maybe if let's say I have a tourer, I'll start taking it off-roading, thinking that oh, it's a nice big bike, a chunky main machine, and it can do a lot. Let me take it off-road. I'm going to start making you know, modifications to it, thinking that these modifications are actually corrections, whereas they're not. Most of us, most of the times, don't need any correction on the bike. We are just spending a lot of money modifying the bike. You'd rather go and buy the next one. Like if you have a tourer, you're modifying it so much to convert it to an off-roading adventure bike. Just go and buy an off-roading adventure bike like the Xbox, Himalayan, GS310, whatever. But if you buy something like the Versus or the Tiger 900, not the rally one, but the tourer one, and then you're trying to do all of your off-roading business on that bike, you're gonna start complaining, right? These are heavy bikes, and they don't have the wheel setup to perform just as nicely as an off-roading adventure bike. So we use that word adventure partly on this side, partly on that side, kind of like a transition in a video. So some of the tourer bikes can also be adventure bikes, and all the off-roading bikes are definitely adventure bikes. There are so many conversations around what an adventure is. The truth is, you can go on adventures even on a cruiser, even on a very simple, small 125cc bike or a scooter. It doesn't matter. Adventure is something personal to you. Whereas the other words like touring, off-roading, rallying, these are technical words really to understand what the bike is capable of and how the bike is designed, first of all. So if you're gonna buy something like a sports bike and you're gonna start tinkering around with it to make it a better tourer, because let's say the Speed Triple, the Z650, the Z900, you can tour on these bikes as well. But is it a tourer really? It's not really a tourist. It wasn't designed to take you long distances at high speed for many, many hours. At some point, you're gonna start getting tired, and that point is gonna come a lot sooner compared to you being on a tourer, like maybe the Versus. Those are better to take you distances over a long period of time. You plus a pillion, plus your luggage, because you're going for a number of days. And an off-roading adventure bike is more about being slim. It's more about being light. It's more about you can throw it, you can pick it up. You can get back on the saddle and keep rolling. It has less breaking parts. It has more forgiving structure. It has more robust framework. You know. So these are the different genres of bike, and I see so many of us spending a lot of our time in that space, in that Boolean space of how can my bike become a little more of the next one? And there is not going to be an end to that. It's an insatiable sport. You're not going to find it. And not all of us can have a garage full of all sorts of bikes. So I guess we have to make a smart decision about what we want, how we want to be riding. Yeah, I mean, if you can go and buy yourself three bikes, sports bike, tourer, adventure, even then a rally bike, add four. Sure, why not? But for most of us, I think we need to find ways of liberating ourselves of this zone of confusion and become happy with what we have, because we haven't yet used what we have in its full potential. So if you own a sports bike right now, I'm sure 85 to 90% of us have not used it to its potential. If you have a tourer, you have not really used it to its potential. If you have an ADV, you haven't really used it to its full potential. You haven't gone to all off-roads, you haven't learned all technical trails. Most of us haven't. So while we spend so much time and energy and money trying to retrofit things, we are misunderstanding the concept of correction and modification. While we talk about correction, it's all about us, the rider, our anatomy, how we fit in the bike. And as I said, most of us are in that standard category where the stock bike is good enough. For example, my personal journey right now, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, uh, the ergonomics on my GS310. It's an off-roading adventure bike, right? So I want to take it off the road, but I also want to be able to plant myself nicely on the bike. So I've been thinking so much about how my foot pegs are, the handlebars, the way I'm sitting on it, and the way I should be when I'm off-road and things like that. I did a few changes, and interestingly enough, I'm finding myself going back to stock. Not completely, but yeah. So first thing I want to talk about is, you know, handlebar risers. The first thing all of us do is just buy the bike, run to the shop and get the highest handlebar risers out there. Or we think that's the best thing because someone on YouTube said so, that you should go and get handlebar risers. That's gonna make off-road easy. That's the right thing to do. But it's not. You have to understand your own anatomy on the bike itself. So I'm gonna tell you my personal journey here, as I do always. When I bought the bike straight out of the showroom, I rode back home, and the distance is about half an hour. When I reached home, I realized that I was having a little bit of backache, and it's partly because I have that as an issue, but it was aggravated. So I realized that no, something's wrong with the posture. It's not right, and I realized that the posture was a little more, let's say, committed than it was on the verses. I went back and I looked at a few of my videos and pictures on the verses, and I realized I was sitting inside the bike with the handlebars nicely up here. And on the GS, I realized it's not that. The handlebars are slightly, actually, quite low compared to what it was on the verses, quite low. So obviously, I had to kind of move forward quite a lot. And a few things you don't want is you don't want your arms to be completely stretched out when you're riding, or you don't even want your arms to be sluggishly falling down because you're too tall on the bike. So as I said, for most of us, the stock bike is good now. I am about 5'10" something, and I got myself CNC, I think 38 handlebar risers, those blocks, spacers that went right under the clamp, and it worked fine. Like I had no concerns with my back anymore. I was much better. So let's say if you were side angle, I was slightly forward, and with the handlebars I became like this. But after doing a few off-roading sessions and all, I realized that when I was standing up, I was still having to, push myself forward quite a lot, and that was making my bike uh, take a lot of my body weight on its handlebar, and I was not able to, keep my uh, arms loose and free. So I said, okay, fine, I'll go and get myself the next set of handlebar risers that are gonna make life better. So I went and I got myself the rocks risers, pivoting and all that. Great, I was very happy. My problem solved, right? But for the longest time, I couldn't find comfort riding off-road. I was just not able to get there. Like I was on the bike and I was feeling too tall on the bike and I was feeling like, if you're standing on a bike and your bike is down there and your handles are up here, you're like, oh my God, how do I, this is so weird. I'm just exaggerating a little bit. So I spent a lot of time doing that. Then I said, okay, fine, no, you know what? I'll just set the handlebars further up. So my rocks rises were straight up from the suspension forks, and then after that, my handlebars I turned them outward or inward, whatever, to have that off-roading sort of a stance. And I said, fine, I'm gonna go like this. Then I couldn't, obviously I couldn't ride on the road like this. It was so weird. I said, what do I do, man? This is not working out. But then I realized that the problem was not me trying to fix it. I was again modifying my bike. I wasn't correcting it. I realized that I was trying to make it more like a rally bike, where you have longer suspensions, but you don't really have longer or higher handlebars themselves. You just have a longer suspension, bringing your handlebar a lot closer to you. So that was the modification that was happening, and something was wrong with it. So anyway, I still have the rocks rising, but I kind of realized where I was going wrong, and I think I've finally found a position where I'm comfortable on the road, and I just have to push my risers up front a little bit so that I get into the off mode. So you have to understand that when you sit on the bike, you must find a sweet spot for yourself, and it's going to be different for everybody. So I can be 5'10", and you can be 5'10", but you and I might have completely different arms length, you know. So both of us, let's say we are 5'10", and I'm 5'10", and let's say you are 5'8", right? But sitting on the bike, our legs are already gone, right? We're sitting on the bike. So from the waist up, you and I could both have the same height on the torso. So you being shorter could just be because you have shorter legs than me. But your torso and my torso are the same. So let's start there. Let's say you and I have the same torso length, but I have longer arms than you. Okay, so if I have longer arms than you, then I can reach the handlebars a lot easier than you, and you might have to go forward. In which case, you can use the rocks risers because they're pivoting to raise the handlebar and also sweep them a little backward so they come closer to you. But it's not necessarily, you're not using the handlebar risers to modify your bike. You're just using the risers to correct your position, and that's the difference. You don't buy risers to modify your bike, and you don't say that I got risers and now my bike is a better off-roading machine. No, you just corrected your position on the bike, and that's the difference. Most of us don't need that correction. We're just going and buying these things because somewhere we feel that's how it becomes a better bike. So you buy an off-roader bike and then you want to make it a better off-roading bike by adding these things, but they're not correcting anything for you. They're modifying the bike and they're actually making things wrong for you. You don't want to do that. Also with my foot pegs, I got those broader foot pegs uh, because I thought, while I'm standing on the bike for a long time, for long durations, I want to put no, keep my foot stable. I need something broad. I need a broad foot peg. But then after some time, I realized that the broad foot peg actually made things far more difficult for me because with the what do you say with the MX boots, I can't reach my lever easily anymore. And also, I couldn't. Let's say if this is the foot peg, and this is my foot. To find the spot where I put my body weight on the ball of my foot. Ball of my foot. So funny, but yeah, that's what it is. Uh, it was making life a lot difficult because at this edge, it doesn't matter whether your foot peg is this wide or it's just this much. It doesn't matter. You need to really push your heel down to get your center of mass pushing down on the bike so that you have a better alignment with the center of the bike. Okay, it's really not. I think the wider foot peg is better to just sit and tour because then you can just leave your foot on something broad and just leave it there. It's more comfortable than having something dangling on a narrower shaft. So for off-road, I think the spiky and whatever is stock is helping me better because now I can move my you know foot a lot more easily. So that's another thing. I'm getting rid of it for my off-road adventures. I'm also now going to use it on the street because I'm not finding it very useful. Yeah, sure. There could be better designs out there. I've not tested them out, but I'm sure the ones that I bought, those are broad, but they're not very spiky. It's my fault. It's useless. So again, I think I was ending up modifying the bike instead of correcting it for me because I'd rather have. You would have noticed cruisers have broader foot pegs. It's for you to sit and put your foot down easily. It's a cruiser is supposed to ask for the least and give back the most in terms of comfort. So if a cruiser has a broad foot peg, I don't understand why an off-roading machine where you need to be very agile, you have to be changing your positions, you have to be maneuvering yourself along with the bike every second, needs something that is designed for comfort. So off-roading is not comfortable. You want an off-roading bike and you want to make it comfortable. You're trying to make it comfortable, then you are not correcting the bike, you're modifying the bike. And the moment you start doing that, you have to realize that, oh shit, maybe you have the wrong bike. So maybe you need to sell your bike and get yourself the other one. Or you can go and get yourself another bike. If you can, and you're gonna thank me for this, that if you can identify when you have moved away from correcting your bike into modifying your bike, you will realize that you can stop yourself right there and find peace. You can find inner peace with what you have. Your bike itself is really perfect. It's been designed with so much thought and research and testing. It's not a mistake. And very few people are off that chart of standard. A lot of us are going to fall in the standard. So give your bike that time to see if the stock setup is actually right for you or not. If it is not, if let's say you are slightly taller or you're slightly shorter even than the standard mass population, then yeah, sure, that's the cue for you to go and start correcting things, but not modifying. Be very vigilant about taking your motorcycle out to a shop and getting stuff done. Because most of the times, most of the things out there are not designed thinking how you want to use the bike. Most of the modifications out there are designed to make your bike look a certain way. So you have a GS310, you put a top case pannier, you have big side panniers, you have a big windshield, you have heavy engine guards and your fairing protecting guards and your whatever is not. Then you have those little tiny covers for the brake thing and the reservoir and all. So get what is useful. Your bike is gonna thank you by performing better. It's a small bike. Okay, right now I'm talking about the GS310. It's a 310cc bike. For every other bike that is sub 500cc bike, the more you put on it, the lesser output is gonna give to you. If you have a heavy bike that goes, that has, let's say, 500 cc's and plus of capacity, let's say 650 cc's and plus and all of that, yeah, it's designed to take load because it is designed to give you that much power and torque as output. And along with that, you can see the bike itself is heavy, and that is a tourer for you because it's supposed to take you a pillion and luggage and take you places while being extremely comfortable. That is a tourer. And another way you can identify bikes is the wheel setup. It's very simple. So if you have a 1717, like say the Versys, let's say the XR 900, let's say the Multistrada, these are tourers. The smaller wheel up front, quick turns, nice dips, and all of that. The moment the front wheel starts becoming bigger, 19 inch, 21 inch, the more you've moved away from being a tourer to an adventure bike, a real adventure bike. And then further on, a more of a serious off-roading bike when you go into the rally space. Okay. So the more obstacles you need to cross, the bigger the wheel starts to get. It's pretty obvious, right? And the higher the ground clearance, the higher the seating, all of that becomes a lot more aggressive in a different way. And the smaller the front wheel is, 1717 setup is the most standard small setup, and it works really well. The more you are towards sports and touring. The difference between sports and touring with the 1717 setup would be that a sports bike would be more aggressive and demanding of you compared to a tourer, on which you can sit upright casually. It has much better suspensions, long suspension travels, very comfortable. On a sports bike, it's going to be very responsive in terms of the suspension, short wheels, shorter wheelbase, and all of that stuff. Just understand that if a bike is heavy and powerful, with 1717 setup. It's a tourer. If a bike has a bigger front wheel, say 19 or 21, the more off-roading its nature becomes. Also, you should notice that it will start getting lighter in its own self. And you can say that Africa Twin is not light, and the Tiger 900 is not light. Yeah, but the wheel setup is still there. And once again, I would suggest, and I think a lot of people in this world, they say that you want your bike to be lighter when you want to take it to places where there are no roads, that it's completely off-road, and especially the rally bikes. I mean, they're hardly 200 kgs plus the rally bikes. So why should an off-roading adventure bike be anywhere beyond 200 kgs? I think 170 to 200 kgs is a sweet spot for any bike, depending on what your skill level is. So if you're like absolutely novice, 190 kgs is going to be a lot for you. If you are extremely skilled, you can manage a 220 kg bike off the road as well. But you have to understand if you have that skill. If you don't, then you're probably going to either hurt yourself or your bike at some point. You're going to drop it and you're not going to want to pick it back up. Especially if it does not have a bigger front wheel, it's not going to go a lot further over obstacles as well. So we think that, okay, I went to Ladakh now, off-roading kar liya. That's not really off-roading. That's just off tarmac. You spend a lot of time off tarmac. But off-roading, when you're crossing real rivers and all that stuff, you'll realize that a heavier bike is not a good friend. A lighter bike, bigger wheels that can, actually go over obstacles a lot easier is a much better bet. You don't want to take your Z900 or Ninja 1000 or a bike like that and cross a river in Zanskar, would you? You'd rather take your X-Pulse or the Himalayan 450 or the GS310. Why not? Why would you take something that's going to make your life more difficult? So, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to let all of us think about it. When do we move away from correction and move into modification, which is useless? All right. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.